On today's show, we're going to answer some questions that you guys have been sending in. We've got Jason MacDowell that's coming on here shortly to discuss with us one of the components or one of the things that were included in the big, beautiful bill, specifically the children's accounts, whatever they're going to be called. So we're going to discuss that, and then we'll kind of springboard off the stewardship verse of the day. That comes from Matthew 7:9 through 11. It says, "Or which one of you, if his son asks him for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a serpent? If you then, who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give good things to those who ask him?" Well, whenever we think about stewardship, we focus on how we manage what we've been given or put in charge of. But before we even get to that, we must recognize the heart of the giver. So Jesus is reminding us here, God is not stingy. He's not reluctant to provide. He's not withholding good things from his children. Nope, he is a good father, better than any earthly dad. You know, Father's Day, you see those cards, best dad ever. Well, that title is well locked up by our Father in heaven. And if we in our sinfulness still try to provide well for our children, and I would say that all of us really have that desire, how much more can we trust God to take care of us, knowing that he can do it perfectly? So that truth should completely change the way we steward what's in our hands, because we're not managing our resources from a place of scarcity. Let me say that again. We are not managing resources from a place of scarcity. Our Father in heaven owns everything, and he is very, very generous. We're not handling resources out of fear or desperation either. We're managing from a place of trust when we can really get this and get it right. We can trust God to meet our needs. We can trust him to provide our daily bread, whether that's food, income, direction and guidance, or just peace of mind. And when we ask him, he delights in giving us what is good for us. So what does that mean for stewardship? It means that we can ask for wisdom before making financial decisions. We can ask for provision when the numbers don't quite add up, when there's more month left at the end of the money. We can ask for courage to give generously, even when it's uncomfortable. And we can be confident that our Father hears us and that he responds and that he will give us exactly what we need. Never a stone, never a serpent, always something good. So today, as you steward your money, your time, your family, your calling, ask, trust, and obey. And rest in the goodness of your Father, because he gives good gifts to those who ask. What do you think, Seth?
It's good, Shana. Love that. You know, providing for children, that's one of the chief commands for parents. We've got to do it. The problem is we are evil. You know, sadly, we are not the father that God is. As you mentioned, Shana, he holds the title for Father of the Year every year. But we do have an example. God gives us the example where we can provide well for our little ones, and it comes from God himself. He's the example of how to provide for his kids, and we're the blessed recipients of this generosity. You know, Shana, I think, you know, you and I are both parents, but first and foremost, we are children still. We're children of God. And so we need to learn from our Heavenly Father how to provide for our children well. And by God's grace, he shows us how to do it well. Even though we'll never do it perfectly, we can truly do it well. It's good news.
Yeah. Interesting here that Jason and I are going to be talking about providing for kids and saving and investing for kids. And, you know, there's always that temptation, I think, for us to rely on the government to do those things for us. And I think that's one of the things that we're going to explore here. But it is our job as parents. It's not the government's job. But
sure,
you have to wait. You'll have to wait to get to the rest of that.
I'm excited for that, Shana. You know, it was interesting when I saw the news about those accounts. You know, I was thinking, okay, you know, I've got a son who might fall in that age range. I'm curious about it, but I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say. It'll be fun.
Yeah, good stuff.
Definitely.
All right. answer some questions?
Yeah, let's do it, Shanna. Let's start with Mary Lou. By the way, let me just say this. The next two questions, both listeners, they introduce it with the proper Hawaiian greeting, aloha. So I appreciate that very much. Mary Lou is the first one to do that. She says, aloha, Shanna. I'm self-employed. I have two children, ages 18 and 15. My husband is retired, but he's still working very minimally. I've just been listening to your show on CSN Radio when I can. I just decided this year to become a partner. We don't have any retirement plan. I have some money saved up and I want to grow it. One of my children is going to start college next year. Is it too late to start a college fund now? I'm 51 years old. That's a good question, Shanna. What do you think?
Yeah, great. All the way out there in Hawaii, listening on CSN.
That's good.
Yep, the CSN audience has certainly been a blessing to us, and we hope that continues to grow. But to answer your question, Mary Lou, it's never too late to do anything, really. Now, what I would say, it's not too late to start a college fund. And, now's a great time if your kids are 18 and 15, you've got one right on the verge there, is to start exploring, different ways that, certainly to see if your child can get some kind of scholarship or to see what's available. I wouldn't necessarily choose to invest anything for either one of them because your time horizon is pretty short there. But I certainly would think it would be a good idea to open up an account and just start saving money there. If you can find a high yield savings account, there are still some money market accounts or high yield savings account where you can get between 4 and 5, maybe in some cases, maybe a little bit even more than 5. I don't know if many of those still exist, but to start putting money back, I think is a good thing, and to start now exploring the different options that you have for where they might go, what it's going to cost, and what kind of assistance you can get, especially merit-based assistance. And just like we talked about in the scripture, God owns everything and He gives good gifts, and He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, and He's generous with it. So you've got all of that on your side.
Yeah, that's awesome, Shanna. Interestingly enough, John Paul, who I think is also from Hawaii, he's our next question here, also says the Hawaiian greeting aloha, has a similar question, Shanna. So he's in ministry, in missions ministry development. He's looking for some help investing. He doesn't want to spend too much time on it. He's not a partner also. He says, for simplicity's sake, I'm wondering if it's wise to park money in I-bonds, gold, or whatever will at least not lose. I appreciate whatever you can share. So I think kind of a similar sort of general query that he's wondering here. What would you have for John Paul, Shanna?
Yeah, so I first want to make the distinction between saving and investing. So he mentions here that he wants something that's not going to lose. So it makes me wonder, is it because the money that he's talking about is short-term money? Is it money that he thinks that he may need, before the recommended 8 to 10-year time horizon? So if that's the case, I-bonds are not so much in favor anymore, but I would say, a good high yield savings account or a money market account for any money that is short term. So once you have enough money saved up short term, your emergency fund, we like to call it, then you can start looking to investing. So then it makes me also wonder, is his reference to parking money in something that will not lose just because he doesn't understand how investments work, or maybe he has some fear, maybe he's heard some things, maybe he has some prior experience with different types of investments that didn't turn out well. Of course, I'm going to suggest that he become a partner of the ministry, or at least keep listening, and learn things about how money can work for us. And so if you're a partner, there's lots of videos on the partners can help you understand how to invest. When you become a partner too, you also get access to our buy list. And so there's different asset allocation models on there. There's some great descriptions. You can decide if you want to be conservative or aggressive, and where you might fall in there. And then there's some guidelines on how to construct a portfolio based on where you determine that you are. So I hope that John Paul will check that out and consider it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And aloha to both of you as well in Hawaii.
Yes. I made the mistake of taking my kids to Hawaii for spring break one year, and I never hear the end of it. They want to go back every
They always want to go back, don't they?
Yes. All right. Well, folks, we got to take a break right now, but we are going to come back on the other side of the break. I've got Jason MacDowell with me, and we're going to continue talking about kids and savings and different things like that. So I don't think you're going to want to miss it, so stay tuned. I'm your host, Shana Burt. Make sure you check out our ministry at financialissues.org.
How is Timothy Plan continuing to lead the fight as you guys now enter your fourth decade of leading this fight of biblically responsible investing?
We've been too silent for too long, and we can no longer be silent. You stand up, like Ronald Reagan said, we're only one generation away from losing all of our liberty. Yeah. It has to be fought for. I wish it didn't. And you can fight for it. You don't need guns and ammunition and that. You can fight for it, especially with your dollars, because it's always about the money. And when the money starts impacting people, they start paying attention. When we launched this, they said it couldn't be done, but here we are 30 years later. They said you couldn't get competitive returns, but here we are.
What a tremendous testament of God's grace.
Go to financialissues.org/Timothy Plans to learn more about Timothy Plan.
I started investing close to 30 years ago now. All that time, I had never heard anyone talk about setting up your portfolio in a way that glorifies God. When I first heard about it, I was listening to the radio, a show called Financial Issues. They were teaching people how to honor God with their money. I became a partner with Financial Issues, and it's been one of the best decisions I've made. Invest your money in a God-honoring way. Go to financialissues.org.
Through the ministry of Preborn, the Financial Issues family has saved tens of thousands of lives of babies. What an amazing job that God has done through you, the Financial Issues family. Would you join us in saving the lives of babies? What an amazing reunion we will have in glory, meeting all the people that we have saved. Please go to preborn.org. That is preborn.org or financialissues.org and click on the Preborn banner.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. Thanks for sticking with us here. We're so glad that you're here. Well, before the big, beautiful bill passed, we talked about just a few of the many components that were in it or we thought would be in it in some shape or form. And we did talk about, on one day, we did talk about the new Trump accounts or what they were going to call the MAGA accounts or whatever they're going to call them. We don't even really know at this point. But now the big, beautiful bill has passed. There's been a lot of things written about it. So we want to, I've got my friend and colleague Jason MacDowell back with us here today. So Jason, thanks for being with us. And we're going to kind of go through this Trump or MAGA account or whatever they're going to call it and kind of answer the question for us, blessing or blunder. So it'll be interesting when we get to the end of it and you can see what we think. So, the initial article that I read about it that really piqued my attention, and I started jotting down some notes and I shared it with Jason, and, through a lot of research, we found that there's a lot of different information out there about it. So we've done our best. Jason's done a lot of research, and we've done our best to kind of go through it and tell you what we think we know at this point. So just like any tax bill that comes out, there's lots of questions with them and how you do different things and how you navigate different things. And, the IRS has to issue opinions, and then sometimes it has to be clarified by Congress. So we're going to walk through what's out there right now. So, Jason, let's get started. Walk us through the nuts and bolts of how this Trump account came out the other side of Congress.
Yeah, you learn something new every day, that you have to unlearn some things that you thought was law, and the government's going to tell you something else. So we'll start with some good static information. Luckily, these type of accounts aren't going to be effective until 2026. So the next 6 months, what we see, we'll see what the actual result is for next year. So that is the effective date. It'll start in 2026. The eligibility for these accounts are start with any child under the age of 18 can have a Trump account, or whatever this account's going to be called, opened by parents or other family members at a bank or financial institution. This is considered by the law called opt-in, where you get to choose. Now, the one that we heard most about are the eligibility for the federal seed money pilot program. That's essentially what HR 1 is saying. That's where the $1,000 is automatically put into the into an account that's automatically opened up for children that were born after December 31st of 2024, but before January 1st of 2029. They have to have a social security number. I know it's becoming a thing where a lot of children aren't actually getting them when they're born. I know parents are making this decision, but this is a requirement here. And then they have to be a U.S. citizen, of course. So
hold up there. That's an interesting thing, right? Because you said automatically opened. There's the first question. By who? Yeah. You know, is it, you know, we've got a gutted IRS right now. You know, we funded them, we unfunded them, all of those things. And if you try to call the IRS for anything at all, you're going to find out that you're going to be on hold a really long time. And if you ever even get through to someone, you might get disconnected before you get an answer. I mean, I'm still waiting on a very, very simple change that I sent into the IRS. Oh gosh, it's been over a year now, and they have to send me a letter periodically letting me know that they're still working on it. But I mean, it's just, it's something simple like a name change. You know, that they can't even do that. So I think what it says is that the Treasury is supposed to have the responsibility. So hopefully Scott Bessent has some processes in place, being a business person. Hopefully he knows that this is coming down the pike, and hopefully he's got a process for getting that done. But that sounds like a recipe for disaster, that, you know, the federal government's going to be in charge of opening these accounts.
You nailed it. It's the Treasury Department. And how do they find that out, right? That's the next question, is also, how do they find that out? Well, on tax returns, if your child has a Social Security number, then you can get a child tax credit. So they're going to look at the tax returns from 2025 as of course, this would be this year, and they'll see the child included on there for that. So that's what's being reported, at least from HR 1, that how they're going to do that. The next part is the contributions. So starting in 2026, the max parents can add is a $5,000 per year, and it will be adjusted for inflation starting in 2027. So another part of that is the distributions. I went back and forth a lot. We'll see what the outputs are for 2026 in the official word. Funds cannot be withdrawn. So I don't know if it's incapable of doing, or if it's a lot of penalties for doing so. I want some clarity from Congress and the IRS on that, but they don't want anything withdrawn from those accounts until the account holder or the child turns 18. So after 18, though, as it sits right now, as we're reading, it converts to traditional IRA rules, similar to IRA rules, but there are some adjustments. So the word similar is because there's some specifics in there that we're going to require CPAs, hopefully, to be educated and caught up on. So
yeah, so that reminds me of a challenge that we can have, or that we've seen happen with IRAs, right? So in an IRA, traditional IRA account, you can end up with an IRA account that has pre-tax money and after-tax money, depending on how you put it in and how it's coded, you know, when it goes in from your employer and all of those things. Well, if you don't give the information to your tax person, whoever's doing your tax return, and they don't record it properly, you could end up losing a whole tax benefit just because the amount of pre-tax and after-tax dollars weren't kept up with correctly. So again, this could potentially be a logistical nightmare. So keep going.
Yeah. So the investments allowed in it is mutual funds, ETFs, and it has to be a U.S. index. So most likely right now, the most common one is going to be the S&P 500. There's some other additions of what classifies as a qualified index, but we'll just use for simple purposes the S&P 500. And it has to be, those are going to be the allowable investments, mutual fund or ETFs for that, tracking an index in that case. So we can look at pros and cons. Pros is kind of more like in parentheses con as well, how I look at it. So the first thing I looked at is how many births were actually taking place this year by the census. Right now, it's about 3.62 million births in the U.S. that's been recorded. If this federal seed program does put 1,000 just based off of to date numbers of 2025, our Treasury and I guess taxpayers too, right, are going to be funding the S&P 500 index, if that's what's chosen, of about 3.62 billion, just based off of all those automatic federal seed pilot program accounts being opened based off of tax returns there, or maybe less than that because of how they're using the tax returns. So that's one metric. The other one is there is no income limits for contributors, so parents don't have to worry about.
Before you go there, let's back up just a little bit. So what does that mean? You know, the investment that's going to be used is an index fund or an ETF, a low cost, I've heard, so on and so forth. But that means more money flowing into the market, right?
Absolutely correct. So, it's a mutual fund ETF that tracks a specific index, and if it's the S&P 500, it's going to be tracking that. It's going to follow with it. If it goes up, down, tracks directly.
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, you know, even if it is, what do you say, 3.26 billion, based on the number of births and the $1,000 a piece, you know, that is sort of, you know, it's a drop in the bucket towards the overall size of the market, but hey, it's still taxpayer money going into the market. So that's something that doesn't necessarily excite me. The other thing that doesn't excite me is that, you know, this big, beautiful bill, you know, Trump was 100% right on creating DOJ and uncovering all the waste, fraud, and abuse and all of those things. And, you know, this really got a lot of people to get into the camp of, hey, we have to cut expenses. Well, 3.26 billion doesn't sound like cutting expenses to me. So, you know, it sort of usurps the parental responsibility for, you know, taking the initiative to invest for their children, to invest for the needs of their children. It's not the government's job, it's the parent's job. So keep going. Absolutely.
I agree. So one thing I did point out here is part of that 5,000 limit, employers can actually contribute up to 2,500 of that $5,000 limit for parents. So if an employer wants to cover that, it's you know, a tax break for the employer. So employer can help offset some of that if the parents can't add to it. I thought that was unique in that case. I can see where people would want to use it because of an employer helping. If anything, an employer is adding 2,500 to it and the parents aren't. So that was I guess you could say a pro of it from that point. And then we can go right into the cons.
I guess we need to get right to the question, was it a blessing or was it a blunder? Well, I guess always free, quote unquote, free money always seems like a blessing, but there is no such thing as free. Somebody pays for it somewhere. And so, and here's the nail in the coffin for me, is the government decides what you get to invest in. And they're picking an index fund. And we all know that we have convictions to be biblically responsible. So now they're going to force me to violate, if I participate in this kind of account for my kid, they're going to force me to violate my convictions about biblically responsible investing just to get the free, quote unquote, free money. So I guess that kind of sums it up. I think Jason and I both agree that this is more of a blunder than it is a blessing. So Jason, real quickly, high-level overview, what are some of the options that we can do instead of this account?
You've got the Uniform Transfers Minors Act accounts for the UTMA or UGMAs that are out there.
Custodial accounts, yep.
custodial accounts there. A lot of these accounts are geared towards allowing you to use a sort of distribution for education expenses. So without going through all the weeds of all the different accounts, if that's kind of the focus of the marketing of this so-called Trump account, there's other things there. I personally was looking at, how do I solve for a Roth? How could I get any money into, a Roth for my kid at some point? And the Secure Act 2.0 allows for 529 plans after 15 years, allow that ability to roll over to a Roth. So there is a way under the age of 18 to get that starting there. And there's some other complex things that maybe one day we can talk about. You have the Coverdale ESAs that also help with that. Each of these accounts all have special rules because they are qualified accounts. So they all have special taxation purposes, and there needs to be a good surgical approach to looking at each one of these. But I just think it's a big blunder, this Trump account, and that there's better accounts out there, that the Secure Act 2.0 actually helped. And even the BBB, this new HR 1 bill, also opened up some new numbers and qualifications of limits.
Cut off again. We have so much more to share. But at the end of the day, I guess the consensus is that we're still, the most free account is to just do it on your own with a custodial account or in your own brokerage account. Well, folks, we got to go for now. Stay tuned, though. We've got more financial issues to come.
In the last 10 to 15 years being in ministry, being married, something that has been constant in our lives is Samaritan Ministries. As we've moved, we've had babies, we've had different things come up, we have just been able to rely on Samaritan in ways that we never really even thought about before becoming members.
Our heart's desire is to plant roots and be in a place for a really long time. It's how we were raised. We see the benefits of that, but we also see the open-handedness of being used by the Lord wherever He calls, because we just assumed when we started pursuing church planting, the quickest way to get from point A to point B is a straight line. And with the Lord, sometimes you find out it looks a lot more like this. And yet, Samaritan was with us through the entire thing.
We didn't have to look into, we have to change insurances now because we've moved states or whatever the case may be. And it's just been a real blessing to us in different phases of life.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Colleen.
And we're the Gen X.
And we're Samaritan members.
Everyone keeps talking about how important it is to invest.
Hey, have you decided where to put your money yet?
But every time I try to understand it, I just get more and more confused.
I get it. Stocks are scary. The market's unpredictable.
Investing isn't something you do casually. It's a calculated process that requires diligence, strategy, every single day to refinement.
I've had enough of the noise.
If you want some help with investing, you should check out Financial Issues.
I never thought I'd say this, but I started investing today. It wasn't as scary as I expected. Since getting connected to Financial Issues, I've had no more worries.
We give you recommendations about how to build a biblically responsible portfolio if you're doing it on your own.
They guide you through investing, and what's awesome is the investments they recommend are all biblically responsible, which means you don't have to worry about what your money is funding. Go to financialissues.org to become a partner today.
I just love the first book of Exodus. The king says, the Jews are too many. Get rid of them. I command you to kill the firstborn. But the midwives to the Hebrews heard the order, and what did they do? They defied it. And God dealt favorably with the midwives and gave them families. He blessed them for loving life. He blessed them for saving babies. We have re-entered the death cult in this country. You think about how much we elevate death, whether it be the chopping off of parts and we call it transgender care, whether it be shouting our abortion, and you see it so beautifully in John 10:10. It is the divide of the entire scriptures. Now, most people would say John 3:16, but think about it. The enemy has come to lie, steal, cheat, and destroy. I have come to give life and life more abundantly. That's the whole ball game, everybody. It is everything. And we have to have the joy of Jesus Christ to enjoy life and to protect it. It's a gift from above. And Preborn is leading the charge.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that segment with Shana and Jason. I always love hearing their insight, especially if you have, child or grandchild who's in that age range where they could possibly, if there's the chance that they could potentially use an account like that. It's interesting stuff for sure. So go back and listen to that if you didn't get the chance to. Great to be here with you. Hope you had a blessed day of worship, folks. And it's wonderful to have you all this morning. Let's take a look quickly at what the markets did to finish the week. They had a good week and a good day on Friday. They looked to finish strong. By midday, all three major averages were positive. The tech-heavy NASDAQ was leading the way, still cruising from Wednesday's strong earnings. And if you remember Shana sharing, over 80% of stocks that have reported earnings thus far beat expectations. And we've got some more coming this week, which we'll get to in just a moment. The afternoon, they were still up. Late afternoon, much the same. And they finished all well. The Dow was up about 0.5%. The S&P up about 2/5. The NASDAQ up about 1/4. It was a winning week for the markets, ending July 25th. Pre-markets this morning were somewhat strong. Right now, as they've opened, they're a little bit mixed. Not really. It's really just the Dow Jones is right around the flat line. The S&P 500 is up about 1/8%, and the NASDAQ is up about 1/3%. The big news from the weekend, which I think is pretty good stuff here, is the United States reached a trade agreement with the European Union. So President Trump and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced that the U.S. has indeed reached a trade deal with the EU. Trump said that the deal imposes a 15% tariff on most European goods to the United States. That includes cars. The U.S. president had previously threatened 30% tariffs on goods from the European Union. And the EU also agreed to purchase $700 billion worth of U.S. energy and invest an additional $600 billion worth of investments into the U.S. above current levels. So once again, Trump continues to wheel and deal there. Speaking of what's going on in Europe, by the way, folks, this is somewhat of breaking news, but Trump did decrease significantly the deadline he was giving Russia to basically end the war with Ukraine. Originally, that deadline was, I believe, a 50-day deadline that was supposed to run out sometime in September. We just got this breaking news as of this morning that he's now only giving Russia between 10 to 12 days to reach a peace deal with Ukraine. The punishment for that seems to be really difficult, massive secondary tariffs on his trade partners. Hopefully that's enough. Hopefully that's enough to light a fire under President Putin and say, okay, yeah, it's time to finish this thing. It's been, 3.5 years of fighting a proxy war over land that's been disputed for the last 900 years. Might be time to call it quits here. So good to see that as well. But that's what's happening sort of on the international front here, folks. Back home, this week in the economy is going to be a bit of a busy one. So it's Fed meeting week. The jury is still kind of out on if the central bank will choose to lower rates in this meeting. I think the leanings are probably not, but some, once again, we've seen some Fed officials say that they'd like to see it, lowered at this meeting. So that's going to be Wednesday. We don't get much today. Tomorrow we get consumer confidence and job openings. Again, Wednesday's the big one. You got the Fed decision there. And then Thursday we get the Fed's preferred gauge of inflation. That's the PCE numbers. Friday, some jobs numbers also. Part of what makes this such a big week as well, folks, is it is a big week in earnings. You've got 4 of the Magnificent 7 stocks reporting earnings this week. So today, not much. Tuesday, we get Visa, Procter & Gamble, and United Health. Now, United Health is not one of those Magnificent 7, but that's an interesting one to keep an eye on here, folks, because they're facing a DOJ probe right now over Medicare billing. So the Justice Department's launching an investigation into United Health Group due to its Medicare billing practices. That's according to a report on Thursday. It sits as the largest private health care insurer in the nation, and it is reporting second quarter earnings on Tuesday. A lot of people are going to be watching those. Some not so confident that they'll be very good, as it's been somewhat of a volatile, really going back to about 1.5 years for this company. The announcement on Thursday came after the Wall Street Journal reported in May that the DOJ is conducting a criminal investigation into the healthcare giant over possible Medicare fraud. So we'll see if that made any impact in its quarter 2 earnings. But that one reports Tuesday. That's before any of the 4 of the Magnificent 7 report. Wednesday, we get Microsoft and Meta, among others. And then Thursday, we get Apple and Amazon. And then Friday, as kind of icing on the cake, you get Berkshire Hathaway and ExxonMobil. So it's a pretty big week for earnings this week here, folks. So we'll be keeping an eye on it for sure, see what the markets do with it. I did want to just give a quick update here. We saw Trump's visit to the Federal Reserve last week. It appears the president did not fire Fed Chief Jerome Powell, which made some of us kind of sad, I guess. If you remember from Thursday, so I posited two possibilities for this meeting. Option one was that Trump would oust Powell, which did not happen. Option two was really kind of an accountability meeting. It was a meeting from the top dog, the boss, checking in with the hope that maybe we'll see some real change. It appears option two is what the president went with. The jury is still out on if we'll actually see some real positive change, though. So Trump indicated that the meeting was positive, even going so far as to say that he has confidence that the Fed is ready to start cutting rates. Trump said, quote, "I think we have had a very good meeting on interest rates. Powell said to me very strongly the country's doing well. I got that to mean I think he's going to start recommending lower rates." Will he or won't he? Remains to be seen for sure. We'll find out on Wednesday if he does choose to lower rates then. But what do we make of this? It seems like a nothing burger at first glance here, folks. But I got to tell you, this might be a slightly off-the-wall take, but I'm going to go for it. I'm actually a little bit concerned about the relatively peaceful waters between the president and the Federal Reserve chair. I'm concerned about the precedent that this could set for the future. I'm all for political leaders coming together, and like it or not, I'm calling the Fed Reserve chair a political leader, because even if they claim to be apolitical, we all know that's not true. But it concerns me. So right now, we have a fiscally strong presidential administration in the White House. I think we can all agree with that. I don't particularly like the Fed, but at least I like the fact that it claims to be, and to throw it a bone, tries to be independent from any political party or group. Again, we said that they really don't do that, but they try to do that. If we're going to have a Federal Reserve, though, I think it's good that it is independent from any political administration. And I also think that there's some goodness in there being a little bit of a tug of war here. Now, if you had the right administration and the right Federal Reserve, of course I would want them to work together. But in a fallen world, usually that's not going to happen. Here's my concern, really, that if we had an administration that is not fiscally responsible, which we've had a lot of those, and if it decided to team up with the Fed, like we're seeing, not really seeing it in full here, but seeing it in part here, and then you have the Fed all too eager to join forces with a non-fiscally responsible administration, I can't imagine the result that would be for the fiscal health of the United States. So the precedent that this sets is more what I'm seeing. I kind of like a little bit of tug of war between the Federal Reserve and the White House. I think there's some health there. I think there's built-in accountability there. It's probably nothing, but I think I like it more when the president and the Fed are a little bit at each other's throats, because it will at least keep one of them, if not both of them, accountable. Really is kind of what I'm saying. All that to say, looks like Jerome Powell will indeed finish out his term. We probably won't get an oust there, unless something breaks in the next couple months or something like that. But just to keep in mind there, folks, again, his term runs out, I believe, in May of 2026. So that's what we're looking like there from that meeting there. Hopefully, I'm not really sure what I hope with this, except that we can see some improvement in the Federal Reserve. If we're not going to get a complete dismantling of the Federal Reserve, and again, we've talked about how maybe the Fed is the least evil of all the evils. If we're not going to get that, then what we need to get is some accountability, and hopefully we can get that from this for sure. All right, folks, we got the ag coming up here in just a moment. Let me say hello to so many of you. George, good to see you. Nelson as well. Lisa, James. Yes, James from South Carolina. Good to see you there. Eddie in Tennessee. Hope you're doing well. Uncle John is there as well. Do we have both Georges in the chat? I know we have multiple Georges, just like we have multiple Brians there. Great to see you guys. I think I mentioned Nelson, Lisa. Who else?
Facebook.
We got Facebook. Yeah.
We got Philip, Alejandro, and Ronnie joining us this morning.
Alejandro, Ronnie, good to see you guys. That's awesome. Thank you, Elijah, for that. Yeah. Robert, I know, is there from Texas as well. So good to see you all. And John from Alabama. All right, folks, we got the Ag Report coming in here with Craig Halgard. Then we'll come back on the other side of the break talking about what some are calling the latest meme stock craze. We'll be back.
This is Craig Halgard with your Financial Issues Ag Update for July 28th. Well, corn futures were lower Friday as weather continues to favor a large U.S. crop. As a result, December corn was $1 3/4 lower at $4.19 per bushel. Soybeans were lower as favorable weather and competition from South America more than offsets any optimism around a Chinese trade deal and strong U.S. domestic consumption. Now, China continues to purchase South American soybeans, buying 22 soybean vessels from Brazil last week. November beans finished today 3 1/4 cents lower at $10.21. The wheat market traded lower straight across the board. Russian harvest harvest is underway, and that coupled with a weaker corn market makes it tough to be bullish wheat futures. Minneapolis September wheat was 3/4 cent lower at $5.84 3/4. Kansas City was down 2 at $5.26 1/2. And we had Chicago 3 1/4 cents softer at $5.38 1/4. Cotton futures continued their aimless trek sideways. December futures ended the session 48 points lower, closing at 68.23. Livestock futures were mixed. We had October live cattle $1 higher, $223.15 per hundredweight. September feeder cattle rose by $2.55, closing at $332.20 per hundred. And we had October lean hog futures 50 cents lower at $90.60 per hundredweight. Now, after the close, the monthly cattle on feed report came out, and the numbers were bullish. Placement numbers were lower than expected. In fact, feedlots with over 1,000 head capacity placed 1,441,000 head of cattle on feed in the month of June. It's 123,000 less than a year ago. The decline in June followed a 159,000 head decline in May. And since the start of the year, placements of cattle in feedlots with over 1,000 head capacity are running 539,000 cattle behind year-ago numbers. Class 3 milk futures put in a new life of contract low, but then bounced off that low, just closing slightly lower. At the closing bell, August futures were down 3 points at 17.23. Well, this has been Craig Howgard with your Financial Issues Egg Update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
It's up to us to stand up and say, enough is enough. All of this unbiblical stuff that's going on, whether it's abortion or transsexual or LGBTQ, widespread pornography, human trafficking. Bottom line, it's still up to us. If we stop investing in these corporations that are trying to destroy us, sooner or later they're going to wake up.
To learn more about biblically responsible mutual funds and ETFs, go to timothyplan.com.
Preborn is making motherhood possible for thousands of moms across America.
I found out that I was pregnant. My family, they were like, no, you're not having this baby. I met Miss Linda. She offered to get me an ultrasound. That's where I very first heard the heartbeat. It was really a great thing that I was led to the choice to keep him.
To find out how you can support the life-saving mission of Preborn, go to preborn.com/FISM.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Hey, folks, did want to give a shout out here. Elijah Kelly running the audio board for us. So thankful for him. Sam Case has been out on vacation. He's going to be back tomorrow, though, so we're excited to have Sam back. But Elijah, thanks for filling in, man. Always great to go back to the old days.
Yeah, it's been a while. I used to do this a lot with you.
Absolutely. So. Yeah, it's good stuff, man. All right, folks, the market's here real quickly one more time before we get to that meme stock stuff. Pretty much the same here. Dow Jones right below the flat line, S&P right above, NASDAQ about 1/3% positive as we're looking. All right, folks. So what some people were calling the latest meme stock craze took place on Thursday. You remember we talked about Krispy Kreme and we talked about GoPro. Well, there was another one that came late in the week. I'm calling this the Sydney Sweeny spike of American Eagle stock. So late last week, the quick hit investors were able to take charge of American Eagle. Now, many people are saying that this was not actually your typical meme stock craze. There were some things different about it, and I'll explain that in a minute. The spike was not driven by a targeted effort at the hand of meme lords, but rather a targeted marketing campaign involving a popular young actress by the name of Sydney Sweeny. So it's American Eagle, a clothing company. They hired this young actress to promote their denim-style jeans and jackets. That caused the stock to drive upward as much as 11% on Thursday. Keep in mind, for the year, AE was down significantly, around 35%. So they were looking for a shot in the arm. They got it. Many economists believe it was simply with the use of old-fashioned racy advertising, where you have an attractive young actress posing in seductive outfits, seductive poses, and it made the stock shoot up. It happened to work, at least temporarily, for sure. Folks, there's a lot to dissect from this. Let me say this right off the bat, because this really kind of is it brings together a lot of different things. It brings in, short-term investing. It brings in wokeism. It brings in, I think, kind of the old-fashioned vices of lust and different things like that. But I will say there were many in the liberal media who were irate at this, because at its core, it is most certainly not woke advertising. Conversely, there were many in conservative media who were celebrating this. They were like, we're going back to the old days. This is great, where we no longer have androgynous, overweight models modeling clothing, and we're pretending like we're calling it beautiful. Where now we have a female actress, an attractive female actress, modeling clothing. A lot of conservatives were celebrating this because lately what had been happening was clothing outfitters were leaning into the woke stuff. And so they were putting, I saw one, it was ridiculous. And folks, please don't look this stuff up, by the way, because it's not worth your time. But there were some Calvin Klein advertisements of overweight men modeling women's underwear. And of course, it was from an LGBTQ perspective, and the wokesters were calling this beautiful. And we obviously know that there's some level where beauty is actually objective. Certain things are beautiful and certain things are not. Overweight men in women's underwear is not beautiful. Okay, it's just not. It's just not. There is a subjectivity to beauty as well, to a certain degree, but I think we would all agree that this is built into the foundation of the fabric that God created, that there are things that are good, true, and beautiful, and things that are not. There is a level of objectivity to beauty. These advertisements were not woke. They kind of harken back to the 20th century days, where you'd have the classic, you have a sultry dressed woman selling products, cars, beer, clothes, things like that, usually to catch a large male audience, and oftentimes it worked. Now, American Eagle evidently figured this out. It's not hard to figure out. It's a marketing campaign that's worked for millennia. It's called Sex Sells. But that's what was happening here. Woke people were upset by it. A lot of conservatives were thrilled by it. Let me tell you this, folks, and forgive me in advance if this turns into a rant, but I have to speak about this for a moment. There's much to criticize with this ad campaign. And I say that as someone who also hates wokeism. Okay, I hate it. I hate wokeism. I don't like it. I think it's ugly. I think it's gross. I think it's detrimental. I think it's counter to the biblical worldview. But I am not in favor of advertising sultrily dressed women as a way to make sex sell. I'm not okay with that either. This is an outworking of a concept we've discussed at length before on the show, folks. I believe it's from the pit of hell, truly ghastly. It's a worldview that at times we as Christians will align politically with, though, and that's not a bad thing. Sometimes we have to align politically with this worldview, but we can't align politically with them. What I should say is we can't align spiritually with it. It's called Christless conservatism. Christless conservatism. Let me say that again. This worldview, Christless conservatism, is what was being outworked here, that many conservatives were giddy at this ad simply because it was not woke. They were having a field day. They were loving the fact that you had this, kind of old-fashioned, basically softcore pornographic ad because it's not woke. Yay! And very much the same, if you were following last year, several prominent conservative female influencers appeared in a lewd calendar called Real Women of America. It was sponsored by a conservative ultra-right beer company. That's the name of this company. They were, I assume, trying to fight back against Bud Light for all their woke stuff. It's marketed to conservative dads under the guise of celebrating American beauty. But what it really was conservative female influencers, including, sadly, some professing Christians like Riley Gaines and others, dressed in really inappropriate swimsuits. That's not okay. That's not okay. We don't want to fight wokeism with softcore porn. That's stupid. It was your run-of-the-mill lingerie calendar, but because it's fighting back against wokeism, now all of a sudden it's okay. No, it's not. It's not okay. American Eagle just did the same thing. It's actually kind of lazy marketing. It worked for them. It shot their stock up a little bit. They certainly haven't recovered from where they were down from. The Christless conservatives loved it. As long as it fights wokeism, it's good. What they did is they replaced one poison with another poison. They replaced the poison of wokeism with another poison of sexualization of women to satisfy lustful desires of men. That's not good. They're content with it. I'm not. I'm not content with this. I want to fight wokeism as much as the next guy, but not this way. Not like this, folks. And Christless conservatism produces this. I hate Christless conservatism almost as much as I hate liberalism. It's a joke. Now, will we as Christians sometimes align politically with non-Christians who agree with our political values? Of course. Is that bad? No, it's not. But we cannot align spiritually. We have nothing in common spiritually. They don't love Jesus Christ. I don't care if they want closed borders or they like guns. Those things are wonderful. But they don't love Jesus Christ. It's the equivalent of saying, I'm refusing to drink a bottle of Clorox because I know it's bad for me. I'll just drink a bottle of gasoline instead. That's what it is. That's the Christless conservative model so often. Wokeism is poisonous, folks. So is Christless conservatism. What Christless conservatism did in this instance was it took certain values that are good, virtuous values of conservatism, like feminine beauty. Okay, feminine beauty is a good thing. It's a wonderful thing. That women have an innate beauty about them that men do not. There's nothing attractive to me about the male body, okay? But without Christ as the anchor, it turns something beautiful into something wretched and perverse. The poisons are different. Wokeism is not the same as, this softcore pornographic lust. But at their core, they're both toxic. And as Christians, we got to stand against both of them. And we have to fight wokeism, but not with these weapons. Not like this. Don't settle for it, folks. Don't settle for the Christless conservative trash. We need to reclaim something far better, truthfully. It's what we need to do. A biblical ethic of marriage and sexuality where the marriage bed is kept pure. Where, yes, feminine beauty is elevated, masculine strength is elevated, but not where women are sexualized in such a way. Where men lead and honor and protect and love their wives. Where men, you have eyes for no one but your wife. My wife is my standard of beauty. She is the standard for me. Where women, where you display the inward beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit. And outwardly you are modest for the glory of God. That is true beauty. Folks, I apologize for the little rant there, but it really, it irks me a lot when we see conservatives fighting back with useless weapons. The only way to fight this stuff is with Christ. That's the only way we're going to win. By the way, I should mention to you, American Eagle stock, not biblically responsible. Okay, so we don't want any part of it, whether it was doing really well or not. The woke stuff is not good, neither is the porn. Let's settle for something better. How about a biblical ethic of marriage and sexuality? Hope we can be good stewards of that. Interesting stuff happening here, folks. I appreciate each of you so much. I hope that you enjoyed today's show. We'll be back, God willing, again tomorrow. Remember to keep an eye as well this week on the partner commentary. Also, if you haven't gotten a chance to listen to the partner conference call, I hope that you'll do that. It was posted late last week, so make sure that you listen to it if you haven't gotten the chance to. Shana gave some great analysis in there and answered a lot of questions. If your question was one of those ones, make sure you listen also. Folks, you got to remember, everything we have belongs to the Lord. Let's be good and faithful stewards with all of it. I appreciate each of you so much. God bless you. And Lord willing, we'll do it again tomorrow. Until next time, I'm Seth. We'll see you for more financial issues.
One nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.